The first NDE happened when I was 21 with the birth of my second son. It had been a tough birth, and he was turning flip-flops in my stomach, and they kept having to physically reach up inside of me and turn him around, which is beyond painful. But that's what was happening, and so I don't blame them at all for what happened afterward. They were doing what they needed to in a very stressful situation. He came into the world, and a couple days after he was born, I came down with a very, very high fever. I saw the thermometer, and it said it was 111 Fahrenheit, which is 44 Celsius. So it was really high. And I was in the hospital on the bed, basically not moving, because you don't when you're that sick. And all of a sudden, I sat up. When I didn't have the strength to do so, I sat up. So I looked behind me, and there on the bed was my body. And there was no emotion, no feeling, no anything at all. There was only this just very calm, peaceful, okay, that's what's happening, fine. And I floated out of my body and into a very dark tunnel. This is pitch black. This is before creation dark. And it's okay, fine, but it's warm, it's safe, it's loving beyond any loving I can imagine ever having. That just completely unconditional loving and bliss. And I thought, okay, whatever this is wonderful. And I was just enjoying it as I was floating through this tunnel. And I got to a place where the tunnel appeared to widen. Of course, I can't see anything, so I don't know for sure that what it was. But it appeared to, I perceived it as maybe like a room or something like this. But it still felt just as blissful. And so I was just like, okay, whatever. And I appeared to stop. I wasn't moving like I was through the tunnel. And I was like, this is interesting. And I'm like, why am I here? But I didn't ask anything. I didn't say anything. And then I heard a voice, and it was I perceived it as male, and it was the most loving, gentle, kind, compassionate voice. And he said, do you want to come now? I instantly knew what he meant, what the complete intonation and what everything about what this meant. And I panicked just briefly for like a nanosecond. I panicked, and I said, I can't. I have 2 children to raise. And I felt more than saw a nod of the head that was complete acceptance, no judgment. And I flew down back through the tunnel and plopped back in my body, and the fever broke, and I was out of the hospital the next day. And what I knew then was that I was here for a purpose. I was here because I was supposed to be here, and that I knew why I was here. I had all the things that I needed to continue on after a very difficult early life. I knew I had a reason to be here. And so I went on through life, and several decades later, I had another near-death-like experience. It wasn't, I'll just explain it. I was extremely sick again, very ill. I didn't go to the doctor. I don't have any idea how high the temperature was. But I know it was the middle of summer, and it was blazing hot outside. And I had every piece of clothing, every blanket, everything I could have on me. And I was still shivering. And so I'm just laying there in bed, not doing much of anything. And all of a sudden, I find myself somewhere else. I don't know where I am, but the feeling around me is that same blissful feeling. However, this place is, there's sort of light. There's a kind of a misty, murky, foggy, kind of brown, pink, orange sort of light. And I know there's a whole bunch of beings around me because I can hear them, but I can't see any of them, but I can hear them. And they're chanting to me, "You have done what you came here to do. You have done what you came here to do." And I thought, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's nice. What? And when I got what it was they were saying, plop, back in my body. And the fever broke, but I was very, very, very weak. And I thought, okay, if I've done what I came here to do, why am I still here? So with whatever effort I could muster, I rolled out of bed, crawled along the floor, and started working on how to die well, because I had no idea if I was going to stay here or if I was going to be gone in the next minute. I had done what I came here to do anyway, right? So I started with Ram Dass, and I started looking at how to die well. And I learned so much. That is when I actually transformed. The transformation of me from who I had been to who I am now began. That was the impetus for why I needed to have this particular NDE-like experience. And so I kept going on, and I get to sometime later, and now I'm helping people, I'm guiding people, but at the same time I feel like I haven't quite finished yet. There's something holding me back. And I knew what it was. I knew it was the relationship with my very abusive mother, who had shot my sister-in-law and killed her and was in prison for the last 15 years of her life. And so I knew I had to come to terms with that and somehow figure out my way through it. But I had no idea how to do it. And I had a friend who said, oh, I had similar circumstances, and I just learned to see them as loving me enough to give me that so that I could be the person who I am. And I thought, yeah, right, that's wonderful for you, but not me. So I kept going on and thinking about it. Finally, I said to nothing, everything, all that is, whatever you want to call it, I asked, how do I heal this? Instantly, I saw myself in a theater. Nobody else is in the theater. There's nobody there except me. And I'm just sitting in the theater. And then up on the stage, I see the director. And the director is also me. And then I see the producer back in the back. And the producer's also me. And then I see the actor up on stage, and that's also me. And then right next to me is the script writer. And I'm also the script writer. And I'm like, okay. And then my life starts playing as a play or a movie, as you wish, across the screen or across the stage. And I'm watching it and I'm seeing, you know what? If I'm an actor in this, so are all of they, including my mother. She's an actor who agreed to play this part in my life because that was part of the script so that I could be who I am. And I understood that before we came into form, we had made this agreement, and we'd made it out of deep love for each other so that I could come here at this time, be who I am, and guide the people that I can, guide the people who come to me, so that that could all happen, because it could not have happened without having all these experiences all the way back through my childhood. And then I was filled with a joy, beyond belief joy, because I could see the whole thing in a different light. But I also realized that as the script writer, I could change. I can't necessarily change the events, but I can change the perception of the events. And I can see them in a whole different way just by rewriting little parts of the script. And so I did. And I continued to live in this very blissful joy for some time, for a couple months. And then one day I woke up and I was just jittery and nervous and angsty and just, for no apparent reason. There was nothing going on in my life. But I tried everything possible to handle this. I tried my yoga, I tried music, I tried tea, I tried, everything. And nothing would touch this feeling, nothing. And it continued for 3 days, and I was all but dysfunctional for the whole 3 days. I could not do anything because of this. And I had no idea what was going on. And then my brother, whose wife my mother had killed, he called me. We had a relationship. We continued to have a relationship, and he called me. And he said, are you sitting down? And I said, do I need to be? And he said, well, I have to tell you, our mother died this morning. And I told him what I had been going through the last 3 days and realized I had been sharing her experience of leaving form. And the crux of this is, on the end of the 3rd day, when I woke up in joy and bliss and freedom beyond compare, I knew where she was, and I knew all of the rest of us can get there. Through all of these experiences, I know there is no such thing as death. Yes, we leave form, but we do not die. The energy that is us, that we all are, that everything is, cannot be killed. And so coming just a little bit later, the wisdom keepers of lost civilizations, which I call the wisdom keepers, who are the ones who channel through me. I am their channel. They wanted me to learn how to do this, how to leave form pain-free and stress-free, like the gurus have done, but without 30 years of meditating. And how we, by the life that we choose to live, and how we choose to live our life, can practice what we need now so that we can die well without all of the preconceived notions and everything from the society that has been put on us about what death is and what it needs to be. Because it doesn't need to be. It can be and is meant to be just a leaving of form. And that's my full experience, at which I consider a timeline of events.
Wow, it sounds like many lives that you've lived. There's so much that I want to pick out of what you've shared, but I think, and I definitely want to talk a bit more about your relationship with your mom and how that was healed. But I think the first thing that I want to address is you've talked about dying well. You've talked about it now, and you've talked about it when you've also when you've had your second experience and you thought you might be dying or leaving Earth at any point now. So you started researching how to die well. So my question is twofold. First, how do we die well? But secondly, most people, at least in my knowledge, do suffer quite a lot of pain when they die. It can be that they're in a hospital, it can be by disease. So we never think of death as something that could be peaceful, because that seems to be the exception rather than the rule. is there something that we're doing wrong or something that we're not taking into account that leads us to have these
Okay.
not good experiences?
Yes. And that is societal perception that has been put on us for many generations, thousands of years. We have been told that's the way it has to be done. But that's actually just what because we've been told this for so many generations, because it's, quote, standard, we agree to it. I know that sounds harsh, but that's what every perception is about us agreeing to something. If we see a different way and we agree to a different way, we can change all of that. Societal perception, social perception, everything that has been put on us has been put on us basically to control us, because people who are in fear are much easier to control. And if we have a fear of death or anything else, that will make us want to be safe. And if someone else, some entity tells us that I make you safe, see how I make you safe, and we agree to that, then that's what we are going to experience. But we change our experience by changing what we agree to. And if you learn to live, and what they've given me recently is the 5 powers of Buddhism simplified, so that everyday people can use this in their everyday life to work on the process of being here now, but also being in a spot or a place or being in a mental frame where you're ready to leave form without all the perceptions, without all the social messages that we've been given about what it has to be. I do not believe there is a way that has to be. And there are many examples of gurus, of other people, lay people, who may have been around the gurus, but weren't doing the meditating, who have also left form, just left form. There's even one who he invited his closest followers. He said, on this day at this time, I'm going to leave form. Even though he was perfectly healthy and he didn't necessarily need to, but he was going to. And they came and they watched him leave form. And they watched his energy, which turned a beautiful shade of pink, leave his body. And then the body just disappeared, because everything is energy. And when we understand that everything is energy, it's just put in a denser package in this particular perception of form. And if that energy can be released, and then you won't have to go through, people won't have to go through all of what society tells us we're supposed to. And you do this by lightening your energy field. And that's where the 5 powers come in. By practicing these 5 powers, which they gave me in simplified form, you can do this. Anyone can do this, starting at any point in time. And the lighter you get your energy field, the easier leaving form is going to be. It should be just like taking off a tight shoe. Just like saying, I'm ready, I'm leaving form. I let go, I release, and I go to freedom, the ultimate freedom, and floating away. And that is how it's meant to be.
Can you share the 5 powers with us?
Okay, I have my glasses on so that I can read to you the 5 powers as they gave them to me. So here we go. 1, intention. The intention is to live so as to have pain-free and suffering-free leaving of form. So the intention here is to live a good life, and I'll explain good in a life in a minute. This is step one, to live so as to be able to leave form pain-free and stress-free. That's the intention. Number two is diligence. And that's the diligence to keep looking deep inside of you, inside of your life, inside of everything, all the details, looking at them deeply and addressing what and how to forgive yourself and everyone else who you perceive as having done anything to you in your life, and make amends if necessary. And amends might be as simple as saying, I give this person peace, or I send this person peace. It might be. It doesn't have to be something that you do with people in the physical form. Number three is letting go of all thoughts, emotions, all of the attitudes, all of the experiences, and allow complete freedom. Look deeply at your life, at what you can let go of, so you can live more freely in this life. And the more freely you can live in this life, the closer you are to what to the intention. Number four is insight and wisdom. And this is the lessons or takeaways from number three that support greater freedom and greater freedom from incarnation. Now that's kind of obvious, I guess, but at the same point in time, if you've let go of all of these experiences, emotions, feelings, memories, if you've let go of all of that, what have you learned? Why did you have that in the first place? And how can you move forward in more freedom with that? And number five is mindfulness. And that is keeping only what supports or serves the moment toward the movement toward complete oneness with all that is. So as you've learned all of this, you're being extremely mindful of how all of that is helping you move toward oneness, toward all that is, toward understanding that everything is energy, and everything means everything, everyone, everything in the universe and beyond. And so that's the five powers simplified.
Wow. That's really amazing. And I love that the first one is intention, because I love that whenever we do something, we need to have a clear intention. And I love letting go as well. It almost seems like a contrast, doesn't it, with today's world, where it almost seems like we're all very obsessed with getting things and buying things and having lots of things. And what you're sharing with us in number three, but I think in 4 and 5 as well, is more about becoming lighter, about not needing things, and about going through that exercise of letting go of your need to have things and just being as much as we can.
But it's also much more than just letting go of things. It's letting go of perceptions, letting go of what we've been taught by society, all of the social norms. I see it more as breaking boxes down that we have been put in. You need to fit this box. In order to be successful, you must do these, check off each box. Breaking all of those boxes down so that we can live in a life that is truly free.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it almost sounds like from what you've shared with the gurus passing away or leaving form, and us being able to have this peaceful transition as well, does the decision of when this happens, does it mean that it's actually in our hands when we're able to master these 5 things?
It is if we choose it to be. We have been told we cannot make such a choice. It will happen when it happens. This is not true. We have choice over everything in our lives, and we choose constantly. If we have intention in how we choose, we will be able to make much better choices that are going to aid us in having a much better passing and be much freer as we are living our lives.
And I often think that, of course, when people pass away, we don't really get to talk to them, about their experiences. But I often wondered if it was indeed their choice, because often enough it feels like it was supposed to happen, or it's what they would have wanted in that moment in time. Not every time, but often enough it is. So I do wonder if at that point people, stand in front of an entity, in front of they're somewhere, and they're actively making this choice of, yes, I'm ready, or there's much more for me to experience, and then they don't come back.
And that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. We do choose, whether we realize it or not. In that very final moment, we choose, do we go or do we come back? And for a lot of people, let's say, for instance, somebody who is very elderly and not very well, and now living in a nursing home, which is not a nice place to be. If they don't want to be there, all they have to do is choose. Take off the tight shoe, leave the shoe behind, and fly away.
I know it happened with my grandmother. She was getting quite ill. It wasn't getting better. And I think her last days, she was saying she was praying for it, and she was asking me, because I was younger, she perceived me as a good person. So she said, if I pray for this as well, God will listen to our prayers. So she asked me to pray for this, which he did. And then she did pass away. So it did feel like there was a choice there. And I've also said it for many years afterwards. I felt a bit guilty, because we're led to think that you're not supposed to be happy when somebody passes away. But I've always thought, how could I not be happy that she's not in pain anymore? There was no upside to her continuing to live, because it wasn't getting any better. If anything, it was getting worse. Why would I want to know that she's going through that pain when she could just as easily not? So when I heard that this happened, I was happy, because I knew that she was getting her wish, and I knew that she was finally rid of the pain that we were struggling for months to make it a bit more bearable or manageable, but we weren't really succeeding in that.
Yeah, let me add in here about Ram Dass. Because I had been studying so hard with him, and because I learned so much from him, I learned what his core message would be, which is that when we leave form, we don't die, but we go to complete freedom and bliss. Or we don't actually go. We're there anyway. It's all illusion and perception that we are actually here. But then we return to our normal state, which is the freedom and bliss of being all that is. And so when he passed, I understood he didn't want us to be sad. He didn't want us to grieve. He wanted us to see him in his freedom and his bliss, and know that we would eventually be there too, or that we are there, but then we would actually perceive that too. And as I was very sick at that time, I was just sitting on the couch one day, and I looked out my front door, which right next to our front door is the carport, and on the other side of the carport there's trees everywhere. I mean, it's not a place where you necessarily go or people go. And I'm laying there, or I actually was laying there, and I saw someone walking by right there along the carport. At first I'm just like, well, wait, what? And I looked again, and here was this person in a white robe with long, kind of shaggy hair and a beard. And I knew it instantly was Ram Dass. And he looked at me and he went, yeah, it is. He didn't say anything. He just went, and then he walked on. And I was like, Ram Dass just visited me. And so I got my strength together as best I could and made it outside. And right there under the guava tree were 4. In December, this is like right after Christmas, this is December 26th, there were 4 perfectly ripe, perfectly round, large guavas sitting in the shape of a diamond on the ground. He'd left me a gift so I would know for sure it was real. Do they want us to grieve? No. In fact, I understand. I've been there. I've grieved for people. I've watched people. But I want also to everyone to know that grief is, generally speaking, us trying to hold on to the past or bring the past back. And what Ram Dass was saying was, no, the now and the future, but everything is the now. The now is freedom and bliss for all of us.
That's so beautiful. And it almost takes, I mean, you were talking earlier, right, about societal norms, and it's almost like we have this freedom. We need to strip all the layers away to really find what everything is actually really about, which is the freedom and bliss. And it's, you know, when we talk about needing to get cars and needing to get, I don't know, jewelry or clothes or houses or what have you, it's almost like everything that we need is already here. We just need to take those layers away and rediscover that bliss and that joy of living in the present moment. And there's something, you know, they also talk about lottery winners or people that come into a lot of money really quickly, and they notice that they're not much happier. You would think that from somebody that's struggling financially, that coming into a lot of money, you know, that's life-changing, it would change your baseline happiness, but not at all. We have our own set baseline, and whenever we think it's external, we think I need that amount of money or I need that car to be happy. Whenever we get it, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like we need a bigger car, we need a bigger plane, we need more money. And you never really reach the end of that wheel.
And this is true. And it's all a perception. It's all choice. And we choose it. And if we change the way we're looking at things, what you have just described is the economy of lack. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. No matter how much I have, I don't have enough. But in the future, and they've told me this, and I've seen it in what they've given me, there will be only the perception of abundance. And in an economy of abundance, it doesn't necessarily mean what we would think of. It means more, the best I've heard it ever described, it was in a conversation between some white person and a Native American many, like hundreds of years back. And the white person asks the Native American, Well, where do you store your extra food? And the Native American says, in the belly of my brother. This is the economy of abundance. We all have enough together, and we all have everything we need. And we don't need more. We have enough already. We share what we have, and everyone shares their skills, everyone shares their whatever they have. And then we all are better together, and we all have abundance because nobody is lacking. And that is the what they've told me is the economy of the future. When
That's
everyone has enough, all of the issues that we see going on today disappear because nobody doesn't have enough.
I could see our issues disappearing if there would be enough for all of us. However, it's so different to imagine that future, given that today it almost seems like a competition. If we look, at people working in a corporation, they're all trying to be better than the other one, right? Because you need to make that promotion, you need to achieve something, so you're trying to outwork everybody else. You're trying to be the better one. We make it a competition again, because we were talking about perception. We perceive it is me against these other people, and I need to come out on top. We also do that when we look internationally at our relations between countries, right? We want to be perceived in a certain way. We want to have more power. We want others to have less power. So it feels like this continuous chess game where, to be fair, it doesn't feel like anybody is winning. It feels like everybody is losing at a different rate. And that's just very much what underpins our current society, wherever we are in the world. But it's based on competition, and it's based on this exact idea that resources are limited, and you've got to be fast, and you've got to be cutting, and you've got to be really keen to get your resources before everybody else gets them, and then there's nothing left for you. So it sounds like a very beautiful future that you're describing. And what I'm a bit afraid of asking, but I will ask, is in order for us to get to that future, I'm assuming the current system needs to collapse. And in the reality that we're living in now, it's definitely not doing too well, because there's nobody really very excited, about the world that we live in. But how do you see the transition between where we are now and where we will be in the future, where we will have enough?
We are already there. We are already there. Especially the younger generations are breaking down boxes left and right. They have seen and they know that the old way does not serve them, and it does not serve all people. And that's the key right there, is that they are building, rebuilding, or changing, or creating a different way that does serve all people equally. When we, each of us, chooses, and this is again a choice and a perception, and when each of us chooses to see every person out there, everything out there as part of us, we are all part of the same whole. There is no separation, not between you and me, not between anything. We are halfway around the world from each other, but we are the same whole. We are still the same whole. And each and every one of us is part of that same whole. And as we continue to see this more and more, all of these perceptions that we have been told are real, which you had just talked about, they continue to fall. They are falling now. They continue to fall, and they will be falling even more until we get to the point where everyone is treated as an equal, but has their own individual unique talents and abilities, but they're still they are still one thread of that tapestry. And each and every thread of that tapestry is necessary to maintain the beauty of the whole tapestry. And each and every one of us is part of that same whole. And that's when we start getting to the point where there's a lot of people in the world right now who are allowing all of those perceptions to drop away. They don't need them anymore. And they are living without them. And they're living very well without them because they have the freedom. They are gaining the freedom that we all deserve to have. And that's how, even if you look around you right now, if you concentrate on all the stuff that is, quote, going wrong, which it's not, it's just being seen for what it is, and it's being, we can change that, or we can let that go, and we can create something new. And that's why you see what is going on in the world right now. But if you look for all the wonderful things that are happening, for instance, you and I, are talking halfway around the world right now about the greater parts of life. That's amazing. And that wasn't possible 10 years ago. And so the change is there. And I see it every single day. And it's there more and more every day. And the more people who come along and say, I would rather be part of that change than part of that, what we had, the more we get to this new world where everyone is treated with respect and everyone has enough.
That's very beautifully put. And you are right when you say that, we're already there and there's so many people that are waking up or coming to these terms, because I see this as well. And I think that it's becoming so popular nowadays to be looking for your own happiness outside of the societal boxes or what you were told that happiness is. It's still maybe somewhat uncommon. But I think more and more people are starting to see it. And that's something that I can only imagine will increase in the coming years. And what I can also say from my own experience, and it's a very silly little example, but I've been, I think for maybe more than a year now, I've been really focusing on shifting my attention on the positives, on the opportunities, because I think it's just a matter of how you train your brain. You can train it to always see what's wrong in the world, what's wrong in any situation. So I decided to shift it to see what's right in anything and what's the opportunity. And now it's very much second nature, I would say. So a couple of weeks back, I've just had this massive, I woke up in the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep. I had this massive toothache, but it wasn't very clear which tooth it was. But in any case, I couldn't sleep. It was awful and nothing would just take my pain away. So the coming days, I didn't eat much because, of course, it was uncomfortable until I could see my dentist. But the way I looked at it was those days were filled with me traveling and with me being in situations where the food wasn't very healthy around me. So I said, well, listen, this is actually so good, because I would have probably made really bad food choices in those situations had I been able to eat anything that I wanted. But like this, I was in pain if I ate. So I stuck to eating a banana a day pretty much, which was pretty okay for my teeth. And it kept the pain away. And then I was really happy that I didn't eat what everybody else around me was eating. So I looked at it and I was sharing this with my parents, but it's fine because look, those people are eating this and I only ate a banana. But it's really, it's a very silly example, but it's really about, you could choose to focus on, oh my God, my life is so terrible. I'm in a lot of pain right now and I have no idea how to make it go away. Or you can think of, yeah, it's actually so helpful that it happened now, because I've avoided these things that I wanted to avoid. So it kind of like worked out.
And you can do this with the world too.
How do we do this for the world?
You can look on, oh, everything is falling apart, everything is horrible, look how all the, or you can look at how it's good. You can see how it's good. For me, when I get faced with all of the things that are wrong, I'm like, well, that's more of the stuff that needs to come up and needs to change. And we're just seeing it. And okay, we and all the generations after us are going to be using all of this information to create the world that they want to live in and that the future will have. And change doesn't happen if everyone is complacent. Change only happens when there is a reason for it. And there's a reason for it now, and we all see it. Change is happening now. And we can see that. And we can choose to see that as the change that we need to be able to recreate the new world.
I love it. So because we were talking about oneness and about us not really being separate, but everybody else being a part of us, I want to use this to segue into your relationship with your mother, which, as you've mentioned, was complicated. What I want to focus on now was how you healed that relationship and why your shared death experience had to happen for you to understand what you had to understand from that relationship.
We all, again, it goes back to perceptions and choices. And I had chosen all of my life, because this is what we're told we're supposed to do. Especially for me, I was raised very strict. My father was a very strict Catholic. And no offense to anyone who is, you have your own choices to make, and if it works for you, fine. But didn't he didn't allow us to have a lot of freedoms. And because my mother they got married when they were 16 and 18, and had their first child when they were 16 and 18. And they had 6 kids in 7.5 years after that. So she had 6 kids before she was 25. And she was very angry. She was very bitter. She was very overwhelmed. And I understand all of that. And I understand it now. But I also understand that we had an agreement that in order for me to be who I am, I had to have all of those experiences, which I could turn into compassion for other people who are going through traumatic issues. And I needed to have all of those experiences, not just with her, but through my whole life, to be able to have all of the tools that I could bring to other people as I guide them, so that they could have a healing in their lives too. And for my healing, I had to let go of what I had been deeply holding for decades, and put it in the past and allow it to be there as it was, but also to rewrite the script. Instead of seeing it as how much pain she had caused me, I could see it as how much love I was being given. Not necessarily in the way that most people would think about it, but the love was for my transformation. And I have become a completely different person from what I was prior to all of this, because of all of the experiences that I have been taken through. And I have transformed that relationship with my mother to the point that after I heard from my brother that she had passed, I was in such bliss for her and sharing her freedom that I could go out to coffee with my friends afterward and they never noticed. They didn't know that my mother had just died. Because in my mind, she didn't die. She transformed, and we had a completely different relationship afterward. And so I hope that helps clear that up a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely fascinating because it's different than what we expect healing from trauma to look like, right? And it sounds like it's not only a change in how you see it, so from seeing it as pain and hurt to seeing the love that was given in helping you transform. But I think it's also what came through to me when you started talking about your relationship was a lot of compassion and love for the hardships that she had gone through, which makes me think that you have done a lot of work on understanding her perspective and what led her to be the way that she was. And that, almost, I think we can often think of maybe we would make better choices than other people. But often enough, when we understand what they have been through, we understand that they may have made mistakes. They might have hurt us. But understanding what they had been through, we also understand that there's no telling what we would have done or how we would have handled it had we been dealt the same hand.
Absolutely.
And now, taking this, I want to make it a bit more practical for everybody listening that, comes in with their own trauma, maybe with their parents or with their spouse or just in any way, shape, or form, but they have that one experience in life that they cannot let go of. And everything that's happening to them, they sort of still identify as the person that was wronged, the person that was hurt. How do we start? And I think often enough, that's just my belief, but I think when we go through life being the person that was hurt, the person that was wronged, we play that part for so many years. And I'm not saying we're not right to do so and that we weren't harmed or wronged, but I'm saying we go through so many years of being that person that we forget what else we are. We're just the victim of that abuse, and we only see that when we look at ourselves. So what would be your advice to somebody walking that path and not being able to find the first step of letting go of that identity?
The very first step is to ask, why am I holding on to this? It's that simple. Why? Why am I holding on to this? Of course, then it goes into, you have to realize that you are playing the victim, and the victim, if you play the victim, that means that you're getting something out of playing the victim. What am I getting out of this? Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep hurting myself so that I can have this particular perception? And once you realize that you don't have to play the victim, you can make the choice to become the creator of your experience instead of the victim.
I love that. I think that's really sound advice. And I think very often it almost feels like letting go of it is sort of accepting what that person did to us. And it almost feels like we're justifying it by letting go. And that's why we're holding on to it. But I think most times holding on to it, we're hurting ourselves. And the best way to move forward is to forgive and to become a person that wouldn't do those things that were done to us.
And forgive doesn't necessarily mean it was okay.
Yeah.
It was what happened. But forgiveness means I'm not going to give my power, my personal power, to that situation, that person, that event. I keep my personal power for me, and I use it in the way that I choose not how that defines how I should.
That's really great advice. And I think a lot of people that are listening to us today will be able to identify with this. And I think I would hope that we have at least given you something to think about and to process in your own time, and to sort of see. It's almost like, I think, a pair of gloves or a pair of shoes. Just try it on and see if it fits. And most importantly, see if it makes you feel better, because that's, I think, the guideline for everything, right? See if this brings you a bit more peace, this way of thinking. I think it might. So then you might consider going further down this path and letting go of more and becoming a bit more free and a bit more light. Now, Lei, it's been so fascinating talking to you, and I think we could have easily gone for a few more hours. But that's definitely a conversation for another time. I want to ask you, how can people connect with you if they want to, and how can they find your work?
My website is handletheshift, SHIFT.com. It's a very simple one-page website. On it, you can find my 2 latest books, one of which is called There Was No Fear, which goes in depth a little bit more to my experiences that I've talked about today. You can also find other ways of getting in touch with me. I really work on a new world business model, or I'm doing the very best I can to do that. So I make it so that it is accessible and available to anyone, anywhere in the world who needs it, because anybody, everybody should not be held back from getting the guidance they need and the support they need because their money system is different than mine, or that they don't have enough money. And so if you go to my website, handletheshift, SHIFT.com, you will find the ways of being able to get a hold of me.
Brilliant. We'll add all of the links down below so that people can find you. And I just want to thank you for being here today and for sharing your insights, your experiences, your lessons with us. I think it was so valuable. We've learned so much. And I would be so excited if everybody, just left a comment with what they're taking away from this conversation. Because I do my best in trying to make every conversation really actionable and approachable. And that's why we always want to give people steps and advice and things to implement. But it would be really amazing if we also knew what you took away from this conversation. So thank you, Lei, for being here today and sharing this with us.
Thank you. It's been my honor and pleasure. And thank you again for even inviting me.